The Paracave Podcast, proudly brought to you by major sponsor Jack's Pale Ale, exclusively available at Parramatta Leagues Club, Shannon Cooney from Glenmore Park Realty, BTZD Clothing, and the official media partner of the Paracave Podcast, the Parramatta Times.
Welcome to another episode of the Paracave Podcast. And now over to your host, Troy Warner, broadcasting live from the world-famous Paracave.
And yes, hello and welcome back to another episode of the Paracave Podcast. Troy here with Troy's take on the Eels v Panthers game, round 2 in the NRL. Now, it's been a couple of days now. I've been able to go over the game and watch the highlights a couple of times, so thought I'd give you my take on the game. It was played on Friday night, obviously, at 8 p.m. The Battle of the West out there at Bluebet Stadium. And first of all, I'd like to say, well done. Another sold-out crowd for rugby league. Now, look, I know most of the AFL people will say, oh, yeah, but you only get about 20-odd thousand at a sellout game. We get about 80, 90,000. But it is still a fantastic result to get a sold-out crowd. Parramatta played in front of one last week at Combank Stadium, and this week they did again at Bluebet Stadium. So well done to both sets of fans. Obviously the Penrith members as well that turned up. Great to see that sold-out sign come up a couple of days before the actual game. So rugby league is flying. There's been heaps of sellouts across the NRL, so this was just one of them. Now, unfortunately, my Eels went down 26 points to 18 to the Panthers. Look, it was a great game. There was a lot of anticipation about this one. The Eels have got a pretty good mid-season or in-season record against the Panthers. Not so much in the big games. They've lost some of the biggest games they have, including the 2022 Grand Final, but we're not going to go back there. But during the regular season, they do have a good record, and one of the teams that do struggle, they do worry the Panthers a lot in games, because I think they have sort of got their measure and they know the way they're going to play. So this was going to be a great game. I saw a couple of you guys out there at the stadium, so great to catch up with you guys. Had some mates come down from around the central coast, northern coast of New South Wales come down. Some great mates who are Parramatta fans, so it was great to spend some time with them as well. So shout out to Jeff, Andy and Adam as well for making the trek down and going to the game. Unfortunately, it wasn't the result that you were after, or me, but anyway, it was great to catch up with you guys. Now, to the game. As I said, 26 points to 18. The Eels actually led at half-time, 18 points to 16, which was probably a fair result. It was always going to be a close game between these two sides, I thought. Joey Lussick scored the first try out of dummy half. Some very smart dummy half play, which saw him cross the line. Dylan Edwards, I think, got caught out at marker there, so Joey snuck over. And look, then the Panthers, they hit back with Dylan Edwards scoring a try off a Nathan Cleary kick. A little bit of conjecture about that one with Isaiah Yeo, I think it was, being in front of the kicker. Was he a bit of an obstruction to the kicker? I don't know. I'm not an expert in that field, but the try was awarded anyway. Moses Leota scored the second try, a runaway try from Moses. He basically ran about 30 metres, I think it was, and there was a big smile on his face, and just kept on going and going and going. I think his teammates thought he was just going to take a hit up, and I think he ended up I think Joey Lussick, he stepped him, and I think Junior Palo as well at the time, I think, missed that one as well. So, look, a great try there from a front rower anyway, I must say, even if it was the opposition. But then Parramatta struck back after a great pass, try assist from Dylan Brown to Sean Lane, who basically just went through a yawning gap, I think, between Liam Martin and Nathan Cleary, and just broke that line. It was a great pass, great timed run, and the second rower, he went under the sticks for the try, which got Parramatta back to 12 all, and then, not 12 all. Yeah, 12 all, sorry. And then Taruva scored in the corner for Penrith. But then another great pass from Dylan Brown to Jermaine Hopgood, short of the close to the line, and saw him crash over against his old club. So great to see him get that try. 18-16 to the Eels in the front in the first half. So you thought this is game on still, but it was good. The players would have got confidence out of that leading into half-time against the Premiers. I don't think the Premiers would have been worried at all. It's only still a 2-point ball game, but I think it was anybody's game at that stage. So it was anybody's ball game and half-time. But then after half-time, shortly after half-time anyway, a massive hit from Kelma Tuilagi on Liam Martin. It was definitely a bone rattler, and so much so of a bone rattler, it dislocated his shoulder. Now, he was laying down, obviously in pain. You could see it on his face, and the Panthers capitalised on that and scored a try through a Isaiah Yeo kick over to Taruva on the wing there, and they got their try, and the Panthers, Nathan Cleary, converted that try. So, look, that wasn't ideal. There's a bit of controversy about that. Sometimes fans think that the play should have been stopped with Kelma in pain like that after just making the tackle. I guess the referee didn't call that. I guess Kelma was sort of behind the defensive line, and play was allowed to go on. So sometimes you will see play stopped, sometimes you won't in this instance, and unfortunately being a man down in the defensive line, it cost Parramatta a try. But that's the way it goes. Sometimes it will, sometimes it doesn't work. But Isaac Tungo, who was always great after being re-signed, or after he re-signed with the club, he had a great game, scored a try as well, and he was very strong during that game. And I think, look, after Kelma went down, Bryce Cartwright, he went into the back line, and he was probably a little bit found out of position, I guess, maybe. Although he is a pretty sort of handy utility player, but it didn't work, I guess, too much as Penrith targeted that side of the field with Bryce in that back line. I guess because early on in the game, and very early on in the game, and a major talking point in the game was Jerome Luai's swinging arm on Bailey Simonson. Now, that shot on Bailey was put on report. Bailey went off for a HIA. He failed that HIA, and listening to Coach Brad Arthur after the game in his press conference said that Bailey doesn't even remember anything in that game. So that is very concerning when a player like that gets taken out of a game for that, like that. Now, Jerome Luai, he was put on report twice in the game, and again, very controversial, especially, I guess, from Parramatta fans and rugby league fans as well. The two charges were a obviously that swinging arm on Bailey Simonson and a trip on Mitchell Moses. Now, first of all, to the swinging arm, as I said, Bailey went off for a HIA mandatory and failed to come back. Now, he's going to be out of the game for 11 days with the NRL's protocols, and Jerome Luai isn't going to be suspended at all for that hit. Now, my thoughts on that is, I thought, and look, correct me if I'm wrong, listeners, but I thought that if a player was put on report for a swinging arm, a foul piece of play, and the player's gone off for a HIA and has failed that HIA, I thought the 18th man was activated in that instance. And look, I could be wrong, and if I am, please correct me if I am wrong. But if that was the case, then you would have seen Luca Moretti, who is the 18th man, be activated and come into the side. Now, what that maybe would have done is you potentially could have had Bryce Cartwright earlier on in the game play at centre, or he could have played at 5'8" in defence maybe, and Dylan Brown, who we all know is a great defender, maybe could have went to centre and then played 5'8" during attack. Who knows? But there was that had to be sorted out. Unfortunately, Kilmer went into that centre position for that game, and look, Penrith targeted it, and why wouldn't you when you got a second rower playing centre who's only just new to the club as well? Force Morgan Harper out onto the wing, Kilmer in at centre, and look, as I said, they were targeting that side all night. The other side of the field, they probably weren't targeting much because of the experience that the much preferred combination, I guess, of Sean Russell and Will Penasini. But look, that didn't happen. The activation didn't happen. And as I said, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I thought would have happened. The trip, look, it's a very... I don't know. People are saying it's a deliberate trip. People are saying that it's reactionary. I don't know. But we saw years and years in the 80s, 90s, if you were charged with a trip, if you had a penalty for a trip, then you were practically sent off. Now, there was a little bit of contact with Mitchell Moses, and he did hit the ground, but he got back up as well and then had a run. Now, again, two charges against Jerome, and he is free to play in the grand final rematch against the Broncos next Friday night, I think it is. Is that wrong? My question to you, is that wrong? I think, look, in the Cronulla game, Britton Nikora, he was put on report for a high shot as well. Now, one of the Jerome Luai tackle was careless, and I think the Nikora one was contact with the head. Different charge, I think, but still, it was with the head. He got 10 minutes in the sin bin, and Viliami Kikau, who was on the receiving end of that, he stayed on the field and played 70-odd minutes anyway. So, different situation in the Penrith game. Bailey goes off, doesn't return, have to put a makeshift centre in, shift the back line a bit. Jerome stays on the field, he doesn't get a sin bin, and he gets put on report, doesn't get a sin bin, active foul play. Where's the consistency? There was also a few head rubs as well into the ground, I guess you could say. Look, for me, it's in the rules that you can't do that. I've only seen a Dylan Edwards one on Bryce Cartwright, but look, for me, at the end of the day, I mean, we're playing rugby league, I guess. I mean, I know all the contact with the head is probably not wanted in the game of rugby league, as we know, with all the head injuries and stuff like that. But look, that's they're probably, obviously with Bryce coming from Penrith via the Gold Coast to Parramatta. I don't know how long Dylan Edwards has been at Penrith for, but perhaps they're former teammates, great mates, or whatever. I don't know. Maybe they're arch enemies and he just wanted to give him a face rub into the ground. But look, we're playing rugby league. Call me out if you want, but I don't. As long as it's not happening every single tackle, well, I guess, play on. So I don't really have an opinion about that one, but look, it was very disappointing to see that Brendan Hands only played 3 minutes of the game. He was left on the bench for a long time. Now, Joey Lussick played well, but he played 77 minutes, and we did hear at the start of the year that Brad wanted to have a 80-minute hooker. We didn't see that in the first game, with Brendan Hands getting a bit more minutes, but this game he only got 3 minutes. Now, when Bailey went off, perhaps that could have been an opportunity for Brendan Hands to come on maybe at 5'8", and Dylan go to centre, and then you leave you leave Kelmer on the bench, and then who knows what happens then. It really does, that the Bailey Simonson going off and not returning really does rattle the side, I guess, if you're not prepared for it, and you don't have plans for it, if you haven't trained for it. But it really rattled the side, I guess, and obviously Brad Arthur's coaching as well, because he has to make all these changes. But for Brendan Hands to only play 3 minutes, it's not, in my opinion, that's not good enough. I think he should have played at least 20, at least 25. Who knows? I think he's the sort of player that can make an impact just before halftime and after halftime. I think when the bigger forwards get injured a little bit, not injured, but tired a little bit, he can just spark that out of dummy half. But look, pretty disappointing to see that happen. The rest of the bench got some fair minutes. Obviously, Kelmer with 49 minutes, Offa Hengawi with 37, and Ryan Madison with 50 minutes. So, look, and Brendan Hands only 3. So, a little bit disappointing there. The forwards, I guess, a little bit disappointing there. They didn't have much meters in terms of meters made. They were good. They were good. Don't get me wrong. They were good, but they just weren't. They weren't running those over those 100 metres consistently, getting close to 200. Regan Campbell-Gillard, 98 metres. Sean Lane, 90 metres. Bryce Cartwright, 88 metres. So whether they're being used in a different way, Jermaine Hopgood, 132. Junior Paolo, he was pretty good off the bench. He was one of the better players of the game, 152 metres. So, look, 15 hit-ups. I think he was one of the better players on Friday night for Parramatta. Obviously, Clint Gutherson as well. He was right in there as well. Dylan Brown, he played a good game. He was quiet, I thought, a little bit, but he also delivered those 2 passes for those 2 tries. So he did what he needed to do to get Parramatta into the game. I think Parramatta were pretty courageous throughout the game. I think they hung in there with Penrith, and look, they didn't get through their. They didn't put their heads down when Penrith went back and scored tries and got into the lead. They just consistently worked through their game and tried to get back. And I think they said during the week, I think it was, that they want to try and play Penrith through the middle and not go around them, which they did. Those 2 tries were through the middle to Hopgood and Sean Lane. So I think that they said they were going to do that, and it worked. So, look, I just think that start of the game with Bailey going off sort of disrupted a lot of things. Look, it's not an excuse. Look, rugby league, these things are going to happen, and you just have to react to it better. I think that, as I said, rugby league, it's a tough game. These things are going to happen, and now you have to react to it, and you have to react to it smart. Unfortunately, Parramatta didn't, I don't think, in my opinion. But I'm not a coach. I'm not a coach in the NRL, so I just have to go with whatever is happening on the night. But probably not what I would have done. As I said, I would have probably... Well, personally, I would have thought that the 18th man was activated after a bit of foul play, but that didn't happen. If that didn't happen, which it didn't, I probably would have put Brennan Hands on into that 5'8" spot and maybe put Dylan in at centre in defence. But that didn't happen. So they will learn from that, no doubt. They will review that, as they always do every game, and work out what they're going to do for this Manly game coming up on Sunday at CommBank Stadium. A few questions are going to be asked. Obviously, Bailey's out for 11 days under the NRL's HIA protocols, so he'll be out for 11 days. So he won't play against Manly. We still have Micah Sivo suspended. It's his last week of suspension. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Does Brad just replace Bailey with another winger? Hayes Dunster comes to mind. Or does he leave Morgan Harper out on the wing? I don't think the wing really suited him. Look, a lot of people have been criticising him after his game. Look, again, it's not ideal for him to be playing out on the wing, so he did have some defence issues, but at a new club, I guess it's one game. I mean, the week before, everyone was praising him for the game that he had, even if he did score the first try. But even after that game, he still had a good game as well. So everyone was, or most people anyway, were praising him for the game he had. That is quite solid. Unfortunately, this game against the Panthers, he didn't. So it was difficult in the situation that he was in. So who knows? We'll just have to wait and see on Team List Tuesday what happens in that instance, who Brad Arthur will replace Bailey Simonson with. Blaze Talagi as well is another option potentially. He can play centre, he can play wing as well. He's only a young kid who's been playing New South Wales Cup of recent, played on Friday night in the New South Wales Cup team. Unfortunately, they went down. And look, outside backs are a little bit of a concern for Parramatta, the depth there. And look, who knows what Brad Arthur's going to do, but he is one option. Hayes Dunster is another option to come onto the wing and leave that centre combination of Penasini and Harper. And then it makes it interesting to see what happens the week after the Easter Monday game against the Tigers when Micah Sivo comes back. Because, look, in my opinion, I'd probably leave him in New South Wales Cup just as an act of discipline. He let his team down, and we all knew what happened last year with discipline with Parramatta. So, total of 22 weeks, I think, suspension. So, look, I would draw a line in the sand. I would have drawn a line in the sand at the start of the year, and look, this was an act of discipline, so ill discipline, I should say. So I'd probably have him come through New South Wales Cup, but that probably won't happen, and he'll probably come back into the starting lineup. So, and then Bailey should be right to go for the game against the Tigers as well. So I would think that Bailey would probably go back into the centre position. Morgan Harper would drop out and Micah would go onto the wing. That's what I would probably think about, but that's 2 weeks away. The next game is against Manly at Combank Stadium. So they won in Vegas, and Parramatta, and they play today as I record this against the Roosters at 4 Pines Park. So Parramatta, they will look to return to winning ways when they host Manly at Combank Stadium, and that game is on Sunday afternoon. It is on, I'm just pulling it up now, Sunday afternoon, the 24th of March, 4:05pm, but that's next week. We'll talk about that one on Tuesday with Team List Tuesday. So, look, that was my recap of the game at Bluebet Stadium on Friday night from a fan's point of view, not an expert's point of view. So if there's anything you can tell me that you thought about the game, please send me a message or comment on the post when it comes out or something like that. But stay tuned for the Talking Para podcast as well that I'm on as well, and get a few other fans' opinions about the game as well. So stay tuned for that one. Look, thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. That was Troy's take on round 2, Parramatta and Penrith. And stay tuned to the podcast as well this week. There's a lot of content coming out your way. Thank you very much for listening, and enjoy your footy.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Para Cave Podcast. See you next time.